Welcome. My name is Dan DeBruin, and I have the privilege of serving as Spectrum's Executive Director. It is truly my honor this morning to welcome those who have joined us for Spectrum's 2020 Veterans Day program, where we have the opportunity to honor all those who have served and are currently serving in the armed forces of the United States. Our honored guests for our brief ceremony this morning include a number of veterans. Thank you for your service. Numerous staff and families whose schedules have allowed them to be supporting our veterans. The Elk River Honor Guard, who will be presenting the American flag, followed by a 3-gun volley or salute. And Noel Hensel, one of our high school band students, will be playing taps as we honor our veterans for their many sacrifices. World War I officially ended when the Treaty of Versailles was signed on June 28, 1919. However, fighting ceased 7 months earlier when an armistice, or temporary cessation of hostilities, between the Allied nations and Germany went into effect on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. For that reason, November 11th, 1918 is generally regarded as the end of the war to end all wars. In November 1919, President Wilson proclaimed November 11th as the first commemoration of Armistice Day, now known as Veterans Day. In 2020, 100 years after the guns fell silent on World War I, we unite as a school and a nation to honor veterans of all wars, foreign and domestic. Our brief ceremony this morning will be part of a larger virtual ceremony that will be available at 7 o'clock this evening, where we encourage you, along with Spectrum families, staff, and students, to join us online and experience and celebrate Veterans Day together. We'll be joined in this virtual ceremony by members of our high school chamber choir singing our national anthem, and our honored guest, veteran and Spectrum teacher Tony Brunt, sharing his military experience and how it helped to shape his life. The program will conclude with a special tribute by our high school principal, Mark Leland, honoring a veteran who was a family friend, his neighbor growing up, and a childhood mentor. In a moment, we'll begin our ceremony with the Elk River Honor Guard, presenting the American flag, followed by a 3-gun salute and the playing of taps. All three aspects of the program this morning are intentionally solemn in nature, out of respect and honor to all veterans. After taps has concluded, please remain until the Honor Guard have exited the area. Thank you again for making time to join us for this portion of our Veterans Day program.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Hello, my name is Mr. Brunt, and I've been teaching social studies here at Spectrum for a decade now, a decade this year. And I was asked to speak about on Veterans Day for a Veterans Day program, and I was asked to speak about my personal experience, and so that's what you're going to get from me. I went to a school in Connecticut called Woodstock Academy, and it was a fairly elite school, quite frankly. I wasn't elite. But it certainly was, and I had my share of struggles there. It was a great school, do not get me wrong though, but I had certain discipline issues, and when I decided to enlist in the Army, my parents were actually quite relieved. Maybe somebody could get some sense into me. That's me leaving the Army, forgive the haircut. I thought that's maybe what they wanted before they went in, but that's my mom crying with both sadness and I like to think some happiness that I was going to do something that was more productive. I certainly wasn't college ready, and I wasn't ready for really anything, quite frankly. So that's my recruiter taking me away to the Army, and I enlisted in the infantry for 4.5 years of active duty. They kind of don't let you know what you're getting into. You think you know, but you have absolutely no idea. This is the person that brought me discipline. His name is Staff Sergeant Curry, or Drill Sergeant Curry. Terrifying man. At the same time, a great man, and he's spent quite a few months with us, and he helped kind of set the stage. So I just want to acknowledge that. I've not spoken to him since then, nor do I want to, but a little bit of me wants to reach out and say thank you. But his eyes would glow red again, and he'd probably like punch an alligator in the face or something. He was a good guy, controlled terror, right? So I was in the infantry, and that's my little class picture. They actually Velcro that on the back, by the way. They take that like day one. So I graduated. There's basic training, and there was infantry school. That's me at my actual graduation. My parents flew down to see me, and I was very proud. I felt like a new person, like I'd been reborn and cleansed of all of my childish behavior in high school. That's my father, and he passed away too. So I miss both my mom and my dad, and they got to see me bear fruit. I went to airborne school, and that was my instructor. It was like three weeks long, and it was a lot like Disneyland, except the hot dogs were free, a lot less expensive too. But I went that, and it was a lot of fun. It wasn't a big part of my experience, but it's you get to wear this badge for the rest of your career, and that's kind of neat. And then I went home. That's me on a home leave the first time after being on active duty and not training status, and that's my brother and my father. I was stationed in Berlin, Germany, a few years after the wall had gone down. So the wall was still up and they were still tearing it down, but it was incredible for an 18-year-old to be stationed in Berlin, Germany. It was like winning the Army lottery because a lot of the posts aren't very nice. And here I was in this major urban center in a foreign country with so much history, and I loved history even in high school, so for me it was a real treat. I was at 6 of the 502nd, that's the barracks in the background. The rooms were huge. It used to be an electronics factory that didn't get hit during World War II, and that's why they moved in. So I took that picture. That was the Berlin Wall still up, and somebody had spray painted the deaths per year of people who tried to swim that canal, who didn't make it. That's me at the Brandenburg Gate. I made very good friends in it, and I still am in contact with all of them. You wish you could be in contact with more, but they're forever friendships. You have so much time to get to know people because you have a lot of free time, and so you get to know people. And that's us in Austria, I believe. So we would go training in former West Germany because all the training centers were still open, even though the unit was closing because everybody was withdrawing from the city. So I got to be in an urban center in the infantry, and there's a bit more pageantry in that unit than in others, just because of the historical focus on it. It was a great time. And that's me second from left. I won't bog down on all this. That's one of my friends on a 60, another friend on a Dragon. That's me. I wasn't a tow gunner, but I was goofing around. When Berlin closed, I got assigned to the 101st Airborne Division at Fort Campbell, and I was assigned to 3rd of the 187th Rakasans, and the unit headquarters is right across the street from me, and that's me in front of the unit symbol at the battalion headquarters. They're an air assault division, so they fight from helicopters, so then I had to go to air assault school, which is conveniently located on campus, if you will. And so you learn how to use helicopters to your advantage and how to work with aviation. By coincidence, two of my best friends, of my many best friends, but 3 of us were in the same class. We all went to different units at the 101st, and somehow we got scheduled in the exact same class, in the exact same platoon. There's only one person in between the 3 of us, and so all these besties were together at the same training school, and it just made it so much more fun. It was like, we're back, right? It was right across the street from me, the school, so there's always helicopters, and when the helicopters were there in the background, there'd be tracer fire at night from the gun ranges, and it was actually kind of neat, kind of surreal. And so you train mostly at Fort Campbell, but sometimes you'd go to places like Fort Polk for the bigger things. Among other things, I was a radio man. That's one of my duties for 2 years. And you learn to hook things up underneath helicopters and things like that. And I worked in an S3 section, was operations. Essentially, I knew how to use a computer and could read a map. Sorry if that was an insult to anybody. And then we'd have this thing called the talk, and we'd pack it up and move it. You could move it very quickly, but there has to be a battalion headquarters, so basically it's a tent. And you jump the talk, and we were good at it, by the way. And when I was there, the entire unit got assigned to go to Egypt to do peacekeeping between Egypt and Israel. So once again, I won the Army lottery. If you look at some of these bases, they're very austere. There's not a lot to them. And I got to go to Egypt and to do peacekeeping between Egypt and Israel. And so I'm a huge fan of that. Recently, 3 countries have recognized Israel. And so this is a movement toward peace in the Middle East. I'm kind of an optimist. The day I got my uniform, I ran over to see my other buddy who was in the United Nations, and I used to mock him for being in it. Well, then I was in the other organization that does peacekeeping. And so he put on his old uniform so we could goof around. And that's one of the photos of me where I have a genuine smile on my face because I don't generally like cameras on me, but that's a genuine smile. That's another one of my friends as we were leaving. And that was right outside my barracks in Egypt. So you're right on the Red Sea. You can see a little bunker there. And I got to see the sun in the background is Tirana Island. I got to see the sun come up every day. It was absolutely gorgeous, and the food was amazing. It was like fresh fish every day, all you could eat, shrimp, you name it. I don't know where they got the food from, but it was amazing. And I'd see the sunrise over Tirana Island every morning for 6 months. You're up early in the Army before the sun comes up. There's all these different nations there, and the Italians had 4 minesweepers to sweep for mines in the Red Sea. And they invited us out one day just to hang out. It was strange because everybody was so friendly, and they just invite you to hang out with each other. So there's all these countries there too, and you couldn't speak the languages, but everyone would take care of each other. It was like this amazing international time. It was absolutely wonderful. So who would have thought I'd be on an Italian minesweeper off of Egypt? And they had ranges where you could practice some of your skills, but you're actually doing something. So there's a little bit less active training than you would think. But they keep up your basic skills anyway, and that's made a grenade launcher range. One day, a helicopter pilot, I was walking down the street, and a pilot goes, "Hey, do you want to ride?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to ride." And he said, "Go ask your boss." And usually you're doing something, but that's what the Sinai was. You have an Army officer saying, "Do you want to ride?" And I ran and told my boss, I said, "One of the pilots wants to take me up," and just sit there and just actually enjoy it instead of having I had no obligation, so I got to sit there and watch them sling load stuff out to the island, and that's my feet outside of the helicopter. It was an old Huey helicopter that they were still using many years after they were mostly retired. That's me at an aquifer, so in a land of little water. There's some anyway. I got to see the pyramids. I got to hang out with friends there. That's another one of my friends I still talk to a lot in the front with the yellow shirt. I'm sorry, the blue shirt. I got to go to Jerusalem. Some officers said, you guys want to go up to Jerusalem? We got to go pick up something at the Tel Aviv airport. And so it was just amazing. And the Army's not like that, but this was. That's me front center. But here's how I want to end it. This was a then Major Hicks, and he was a big inspiration to me. He was Special Forces. He was a kind man. He was a violent man in the sense that he would be, but he was just who he was. And he's very professional. I mean, they are who they had a job to do, and they would do it if necessary. But he treated me very professionally and kind. And then Major Rawlinson, I worked with him very closely for the 6 months before that. And both these men meant so much to me. They were like additional fathers to guide me. I didn't really start hitting my stride until the last 2 years, and they really helped me a lot. And that's me and then Major Rawlinson. They both got promoted afterwards. They stayed in the Army. And that's us at essentially a grocery store. It sold like crackers and warm sodas. And that's what the Sinai was. But I reached out to Major Rawlinson. I tried to a few months ago, and it turns out he had passed of a disease. And this is what I wrote on his memory page. And I was very sad for I'm still sad, but I certainly went through some grief because I wanted to reach out and say thank you, and then I couldn't. And that's what happens when you wait a quarter century to contact somebody from your past. So lesson learned, folks. Make sure you reach out early. Both of them stayed in. They sacrificed so much for their country, mostly having to do with the family obligations. You don't get all this time off. You miss time with kids when you deploy all the time, and you're gone most of your marriage. It has an impact on military families. And so I always appreciate that. I didn't really appreciate it as much until I got my own family. And so I intend to reach out to, he retired as a general, William Hicks, big inspiration to me. A historian named Robert Grogan wrote something in a book that I bought. And it says, for Tony, soldier and teacher, noble professions both. And this is a long time ago. And I like to add husband and father to that. But between the four of them, that looks pretty good as a final last words. Noble professions both. I met a beautiful girl named Michelle, and that's why I moved to Minnesota, was to be with her. And we have a son together named Peter. And between the Army and married life, it makes me who I am, and a teacher, of course, is a huge part of my identity. We had a son, and that's a picture of me, and I'm holding up a picture of me next to my son. Of course, you have to inject the Army into everything. It's essentially a veteran requirement. But I also injected Spectrum High School into it on the day he was born. And so I suspected I would be around here for a long time. So, ghosting isn't just a temporary catchphrase for me. I'm pretty sure I'm going to retire here. And that's my son in my old Army beret for peacekeeping with a cute little 3rd of the 187th shirt on. My mother got to see him briefly before she passed. My father got to see him for a bit more before he passed. But both of them were very happy that I was in the Army, and my son benefits from that. So here we are in the age of COVID. We're wearing masks all the time, and we're all getting through this together, but the infantry gave me a can-do attitude and to achieve great things under adversity, certainly. So here I am teaching our students and your children and doing the best that I can. And the Army had something to do with it. And so a little bit of Major Rawlinson and Major Hicks lives in me, and then I pass that forward to my family and your children. And so here we are, pressing forward. And this Veterans Day, the one thing I'd like to say to you is make sure you reach out to veterans in your family and ask for their stories. My papa was in World War II. I know very little about his activities. He had something to do with mechanical engineering for the Royal Air Force. It's unclear to me exactly what it was. He wasn't in the Royal Air Force, but he had an important role outside of it. My grandfather was in the U.S. Army fighting across France toward Germany, and I never asked them, because I was younger, to ask for their stories. My father was in the U.S. Navy. I didn't ask him much about it, know very little. And my father-in-law was in the U.S. Army in South Korea. And so if you have a veteran in your family, ask, what did you do and what was your job? Sometimes you don't even know what, oh, my daughter's in the Marine Corps. Well, what do they do for the Marine Corps? It's hard to kind of explain, but you should probably ask a little more specifics before they pass. When you can get their records, but their records tell very little of the story. So this Veterans Day, reach out to a veteran and ask them what they did and where they were and how they like it. What'd you like it best and what'd you like worse? There's plenty of both those stories. So this is Mr. Brunt, and this is Veterans Day 2020.
Taking the time to honor our veterans on Veterans Day is extremely important. It's an honor to be able to do so, as well as it's so extremely important for us in the time that we live in right now to remember those that came before us and that laid their lives on the line for us to be able to have the opportunities that we have in our world today. It's extremely important for us, whether we are adults or kids, to be able to look back and think about the things that those men and women had to go through in order for us to again have the freedoms that we have. My story involving Jerry Bergstrom goes back to when I was 9 years old, and I moved to Elk River with my family at that point in time. Prior to living in Elk River, we spent the first 9 years of my life living in Champlin, Minnesota. And when we moved to Elk River, Jerry was our neighbor, and my parents developed a friendship with him and his wife pretty quickly, being neighbors with them and kind of being out in a rural area of Elk River. And Jerry, what I remember of him was just one of the kindest, most gentle human beings I've ever been around. And honestly, he ended up just being a mentor to me. But Jerry was in the Navy for 3 years. He served during World War II. He was in the Navy from 1943 to about 1946. And as anyone would know who knows anything about history, World War II was a war that was honestly fought for democracy as we know it today. And Jerry was one of those men who served during that time. One of the unique things about my story with Jerry is that when I was growing up, I was an active member in our bands at school, as many of you are, students here at Spectrum. And I had the opportunity to learn taps at a pretty young age, and then my dad and mom came up with the idea of, on Labor Day and Memorial Day every year, of me playing taps over the Mississippi River, where I grew up. And I just remember how much it meant to him each year that I would play taps over the river, and it would obviously echo across and whatnot, and it was just, it was a really emotional thing for him, I know, and just an honor for me to be able to do that.